Here we go. Here they're moving right now. Watch it. Hey, pig.
And that just used to be in the moved around like the pepper.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, that's good.
Here come the learning disabled one. Okay, there you go. They're all in. You know, it's hard work, but somebody has to do it. So now they're moved. And people that don't think pigs eat grass just need to watch these pigs for a few minutes. They eat a lot of grass. Now here's the point that you need to understand. You see the paddock they've just vacated. That paddock looked just like this 40 days ago. This paddock looked just like that 40 days ago.
Wow.
Okay? So we've been running this continuously now for more than 20 years with pigs, and you know, it morphed into a lot of thinking. I did not think, when we started this over 20 years ago, I did not think that I would be bringing you up here and it would look like this. Okay, I thought we were gonna that we would have to plant annuals. So the progression was this. So it was deep woods. We knew we were going to do this experiment. Well, when I do these kinds of things, I like to put them away where nobody will see them, you know, in case they really mess up and I don't, you know, I'm not having to be embarrassed. So that's why we came up here, okay, to get far enough away that whatever we messed up, nobody would see. So we came up here, and this was deep woods, just like here behind you. And we cut it down. We sold firewood, had saw logs, milled those up for lumber, and opened up the 2-acre place. We put in the paddocks, and so this was, you know, initially cut over, stumps all over, and so the first year concerned about ground cover. I actually, with a cyclone cedar, spun on barley, okay, and tied with baler twine. I tied a couple of branches behind me and just walked over and spun on barley. It came up real nice, and I mean, you know, it was way too rough to get a cedar or a planter or anything like that in here. Stumps and, you know, tree top, you know, laps and things. So did that. And then the next year, we thought, hey, you know, that worked so well. Why don't we plant some more salad annuals? So we thought we planted some open pollinated field corn. That did real well, and the pigs hogged down the field corn, and did real well. The next year we said, hey, let's refine it a little more. So we said, let's plant some Three Sisters garden, you know, the old Native American, the beans, the corn, and the squash. And that's all, you know, protein, starchy, you know, and maybe the pigs can self-feed on that. And that year we had a drought. Not a single seed came up. Put all that effort in planting this squash, beans, and corn and didn't get a single plant. Then we realized the importance of the 2 previous years. You know, you call it beginner's luck, you could call it, you know, anyway, we had strategic rains, but it worked. The 3rd year, it didn't work at all. But what was interesting was, by the 3rd year, we started noticing these grasses coming in. Grasses that we had never even seen before. And we had the NRCS agent up. You know, these guys are supposed to know all the grasses. And he said, I've never seen this before. Jim Garish came out He said, this is impossible. We had ryegrass. He said, this is impossible. Ryegrass isn't native here. I said, well, you said you planted it. I said, no, we didn't plant it. Didn't bring any seeds in at all. He said, well, this is impossible. So when Jim Garish says it's impossible, then you know you're on something special. And anyway, to cut to the chase, what developed over time was that this strategic disturbance awakened a latent perennial prairie seedbed and revegetated this area with the original perennials that were here 600 years ago. Okay? Now, some people say that these seeds will last, that their seeds are viable 1,000 years. I don't know who's been around counting 1,000 years to know if they've been 1,000 years. But anyway, there are numerous respectable researchers that. Yeah, Chris, if you need to go ahead and do stuff and move, don't go ahead and do it. Go about your business.
Okay.
Don't.
We're gonna turn the spark on there. So.
Okay. All right. You can turn the spark on. I don't think anybody's.
Needs checks.
Yeah. Okay. All right. The water is set up. Okay. So. So anyway, I'll talk about all the infrastructure then in a minute. Yeah, you go ahead. Whatever you need to do is fine. You can turn the spark on. I think we'll be aware of that. So it's really been quite an interesting study in ecology and succession, because it's really cool to be able to stand right here in such a profound visceral expression of ecological succession. It's like being in a time warp. You can, in other words, you can look up the paddocks and see where they vacated not too long ago. They've already been through once. They're on their second rotation. This, where they are right now, the paddock they just vacated looked just like this, a week ago. All right, so they ate all the grass, took it down, and now it looks like a moonscape. And you can look back and see the regrowth, the progressive regrowth as you go up the paddocks. As the ones that have had more time have gone to their expression. And so this is truly an amazing study in the resilience of nature, the seed bank, the ability, the desire of nature to clothe itself and to not have bare soil. And what makes this work is rain. But what makes it work is that the pigs, is that the rest period gives it a rest. So what you have here is strategic disturbance, and then the disturbance is followed by a very long rest period. Okay? And the rest period has to be long enough to really let these plants go to what we call physiological expression, to really make a seed head, add seed to the seed bank and that sort of thing, and actually express themselves. Now, I can tell you that the types of plants that have come in here have been extremely varied over the 20 years. Some year and different paddocks will show different types of species even in the same year. If you happen to hit one in a real dry time, it will look different in 6 months. The one that you hit when it was very dry will look different than the one you hit when it was very wet, for example. The disturbance in the dry creates a different type of plant and type of recuperation post-disturbance than one that's disturbed in the wet. Okay? So this has been our trial. This was the oldest pasture. We now have, a dozen of these. And this is the oldest one. It's the one where we made all our mistakes. And there's a sweet spot where you you want to disturb it enough to create this kind of ecology, but not too much. And we have done both. If you don't disturb it enough, then it reverts to brambles and early early forestal succession. If you disturb it too much, it goes to nothing but weeds. All right. So if you want lush grass type, prairie type vegetation, there's a sweet spot. And we've done both, and over time what we've gravitated to is the feeder and the paddock size. So for our ecology, and for yours it might be different, but for ours what we've found is that a 2-ton feeder on a half-acre paddock is the right amount of disturbance. Because here's the thing, if you say, well, we're going to put them in for X number of days, well, there's a big difference. A group of 50 pigs that weigh 100 pounds are very different in their disturbance factor than a group of 50 pigs at 200 pounds for the same number of days. So how do you create a constant so that your level of impaction, your level of ecological massage, if you will, is the same every time? And what we've finally come up with is the self feeder gives us a constant, because as the pigs grow, they eat more supplemental feed, and so if you give them the same amount of feed every time, then as they grow, their stay shortens. So when they first come up here, they might be in a paddock, 50, 75 pound pigs might be in a paddock for, goodness, they might be in here for 12 days. And when they're 230 pounds, those same pigs might only be in a paddock for 5 days. But that's the same level of disturbance. It's the same animal impact on that area as the pigs have grown. Everybody with me on that? Mm-hmm. So the feed creates a constant to keep me honest, because the easiest thing to do in the world is say, it doesn't really suit us to move them. Let's take a barrel of feed up there and feed them again. We'll move them Monday. Okay? It's the easiest thing in the world to do. But that can be the difference between a year of weeds and a year of setback compared to a year of progress. Now, let's all agree this is rough ground up here. You see the rocks? I mean, this is mountain. This is pretty marginal farmland, wouldn't you agree? Yeah. Although historically, you have to realize before the Europeans came, this was silvopasture, bison. These mountains were the balls where the bison went up in the summertime because it was cool, and the Native Americans would follow them and hunt. But this was the first Europeans who came here wrote back and said they could take a continental army anywhere from the Mississippi to the Atlantic and never make a road. It was that open. So these dark, foreboding forests that we have today are of European development, not of Native American development. They didn't like this kind of stuff. Why? You couldn't see your enemy. That's a scary place to be when you're an Indian, right? Okay. and so the Native Americans, of course, would burn strategically, routinely. And of course, you had herds of 3 million buffalo. Captain Jim Bridger, first out into the Black Hills of the Dakotas, wrote back, he said, I got behind a herd of 7 million buffalo. He said, if we hadn't been carrying oats for our horses, we'd have all starved to death, because there was nothing, there was not a morsel or a stalk to eat behind that herd of buffalo. It was completely denuded. And of course, that's always intrigued me. Captain Bridger, hey, Lieutenant, come up here, get a fresh parchment out. sharpen your quill here, and we're gonna start counting. Put a tick mark. 1, 2, 3. You got that there? 3, 4, 5. Put a diagonal. 5. All right, 5. All right, 6. I mean, really, 7. Anyway, that's always intrigued me. But yeah, there's a diary of a guy that was out in Arkansas in 1870. He came up on a hilltop there, and he recorded that he could see for 50 miles. He was a guy that knew the territory there, knew kind of how far things were, and he could see out to another mountain there 50 miles away, a hilltop. And he said, I saw a herd of buffalo that was 50 miles long and 20 miles wide, and you could not see the prairie between the animals. Now just think about that. 50 miles long, 20 miles wide, and couldn't see the prairie between the animals. You know, it's quite a profound reality for many, many Americans today to realize that this country produced more pounds of animal 500 years ago than we do today with hybrid seeds, chemical fertilizer, John Deere tractors, and Tyson efficient confinement chicken houses. Audubon said he sat under a tree and he said, I couldn't see the sun for 3 days for the passenger pigeon flock that went over him. Anybody had a flock of birds fly over recently that blotted out the sun for 3 days? The Indians recorded that the birds would come in, these massive flocks, they would come into an area like this and roost of a night so thickly that all the tree branches were broken down. You'd wake up in the morning and look out, and all you saw were trunks, like just spires stuck, and the ground had an inch of manure on it. In fact, Dave Schaefer, if any of you are members of American Pastured Poultry Producers Association, which I highly recommend, he had the most fascinating editorial. He's the new president, and he's a Featherman Plucker fame. Fascinating editorial last issue where he said that all credit to Alan Savory and the holistic management people and mob and herd grazing and mob stocking and all this stuff. He said they're missing one thing. They're missing this massive bird component that was with the herbivores. People are missing that massive bird component. He posited, he said, perhaps those of us in the pastured poultry movement are bringing, that's one reason why our pastures respond so magnificently. I hope you've appreciated seeing our pastures. I mean, the grass out there is pretty cool, okay? But we have all this poultry, and so we've got this diversified manure load, this diversified animal and manure load that is ecologically magical, okay? And I thought it was really a profound thought. That it was one of these brand new thoughts I'd never heard, seen, or anything before. But intuitively it resonates with me that yes, we had the buff bison, but we also had these massive. We know there were turkeys, prairie chickens, pheasants, grouse, huge coveys of quail. I mean, millions and millions of quail. Passenger pigeons, of course, they were just by the billions and billions. Well, they lived here before there was barley and rye and wheat and what they lived on. They lived on these big seed head spires that summer annuals and these native grasses create, and all the bugs and insects that live down in all this. There was a tremendous symbiotic relationship between all these birds and the animals. So this was a very open ecology and or environment. Well, today we don't have fire. We don't have the buffalo. We don't have fire because if you start a fire, the fire department comes and puts it out. So you don't have fire. We don't have the bison. But what we do have we have pigs and high-tech electric fencing. And so One of the things that we're attempting to do here is bring back this widely spaced silvopasture concept using pigs and electric fencing to mimic the kind of disturbance and rest